We're here. Okay. Well, we have already been through this, but I do think we're actually live this time.
Okay,
Please God.
fantastic.
Before I introduce you to my marvelous, talented, remarkable woman and guest, Miss Tia Hanna, I have a tradition. Oh, my husband just gave me the we are live. Hallelujah.
La.
Okay. Oh, I have a little tradition. That is because for the past 7 years, I have been delving into the art of ceramics and pottery. And trust me, folks, it is as endless a pursuit as music and any art form. It is
Mm.
beautiful. And you get to play in mud. What could be better? Um, so today I am featuring the ceramics of my friend and remarkable artist, Wen Fen Pan. She caught my attention before I ever started doing ceramics on my own. I went every year to the Potter's Guild sale and bought things and loved things. And I just found every year I would buy something of Wenfin's. She does a lot of firing in the soda kiln, and it has this lustrous, beautiful gradations of color and texture. So this is her first piece I'm going to show you.
Beauteous, beauteous, beauteous.
I know, isn't that just stunning? Don't you want to just eat it for lunch? These are all soda firing that I'm going to show you. My husband bought me this grand, beautiful teapot.
That is gorgeous.
Isn't that
It
spectacular?
really
Again,
is.
the gradations of color just thrill me. These are a little different, and I love it because the shape is a little different and thought-provoking.
Very mod.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Mod.
I don't know. I mean, I call it mod. I like it.
So what is mod? Like
Just modern, just very modern art looking.
oh, it's very mod.
Yeah, it's very mod. Very nice.
That is hip. Okay. And then there's another smaller matching one.
Mm.
Love the hint of pink in this.
Hmm.
Looks like a sunset.
It really
And
does.
then lastly, but not leastly, and she does other work other than soda firing, but I guess I'm so attracted to the luscious colors in this.
Yeah,
Isn't that
I like the
gorgeous?
rings.
So Wen Fin has definitely the soul of an artist. I think she sees the world through artist's eyes. We went walking in the woods one day and she took her camera and you could see everything she shot was from this aesthetic perspective,
Mm.
just beautiful. Love her work. I also want to tell you, as you know, artists of all kinds and arts organizations are having a really tough time during COVID. It's it's just brutal. Um, and so whenever you can support your arts organizations, folks, oh my God, please do. Please, contribute to live concerts. If you've got local symphonies, support them. The Greater Lansing Potters Guild is one of those organizations. They've been in existence for 50 years. I am privileged right now to be what do we call me? A visiting potter, which to me means an apprentice. I'm learning how to load and unload the kiln, how to do glazes, all this sort of thing. They are, in lieu of having their live sale, which they normally do two times a year, they're having an online auction.
Mm.
And they're having it November 9th through the 13th, 8 a.m. in the morning till 8 p.m. That's Eastern time. You can find them and you can see previews of the works. They're taking pictures of all the people that are auctioning, including me, at Greater Lansing Potters Guild Facebook page.
Mm.
And if you forget that, come to my page. I'm sharing this all the time. And go in and support some of your local artists and buy some beautiful pieces. I mean, the things are stunning, really, honestly, just so beautiful. So, Wenfin, thank you, my dear, for all the beauty you put into the world. And the Greater Lansing Potters Guild, hats off to you. So, visit their page, buy some stuff from their auction, and support your local artists.
All right.
All
Amen.
right. Now, on to the joy and the fun we're going to have today. I am very excited and looking forward to our chat about art and life and music and spiritual matters with Tia Imani. Hanna, welcome,
Hey.
Tia. Hey, hey, beauty.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's good to
Oh,
be here.
I'm so pleased to have you. Now, before we talk, I always start off with a few quotes, and you have some doozies.
Oh,
So, do you mind?
sure, not a problem.
All right, check this out. And again, I want people to say this about me as well. So, I mean, this is a really good quote. She's hoarding a talent overload. Who says that? I just think that's fabulous. Now, here's the second quote that I just love. Tia Amani Hanna is a musician who takes listeners from one deep, swelling moment to the next, rarely pausing between chords without inhaling a fresh breath of passion into the river of her work.
Oh, you make me blush now.
I'm blushing too. That is so deep.
Oh, that's
That's
really, it was a really
beautiful.
nice thing to be said about me. So, yeah. Now I
And
just have to live up to it.
I know, right? Just beautiful. So, Hannah, before we get into the nitty gritty of life and music and depth and beauty, what are you eating during COVID?
What am I eating during COVID? Well, a lot of Mediterranean food. And we have a really great taqueria. I live in Farmington now, and we have a Taqueria Victoria on the end of our block. So on Fridays, I allow myself to go and get a really authentic Mexican food. Um, and the rest of the time, it's my partner is Lebanese, so we do a lot of Mediterranean. Um,
Oh,
so it's, and then pretty much anything I can get my hands on, because stress eating is still a big thing. Have a big sweet tooth,
oh,
but yeah. But food generally, just food.
I'm with you. We've been making we've been making a lot of interesting dishes. And then it's amazing how quickly the interesting dishes turn into ho hum and you have to find something new.
Yeah, yeah.
Indian takeout has been a big, we've got a great Indian restaurant right here in Okemos.
Ah,
And oh, the food is, I have to hold myself back from not
gotta
doing
love
it more than
Indian.
at least once a week. It's so
Oh
good.
yeah, yeah.
So good. Well, your partner, Diane, and you have been involved in the arts community here in Lansing area. And are you in Farmington Hills now? Is that
No,
right?
just Farmington, which is right. It's like right next to Farmington Hills, so it's the older part of the city. They have a really beautiful downtown district and a farmers market and a little square where they put an ice rink in the summer, in the wintertime, and in the summer they have the market, and it's really lovely. So
I didn't know you'd moved from Lansing. Isn't that something? I thought you were here.
no, been here for 2 years, and yeah, we just decided to move to a smaller place with no stairs, and everything was all together. And so the goal was to live at a rate that was more affordable so that we could travel. And then COVID hit.
That's
Because the first,
exactly what happened with us.
yeah.
Ronnie retired.
Hmm,
I cut back on my teaching, and we thought, okay, we're going to plan a couple of major trips a year and just travel. And
right,
then
right,
COVID hit.
right. We got one trip in last year, which was really great. We got to go to New Orleans for like a week and hang out, and it was really fun because I had never been. So we went and we just had a really great time. So
It's a great place, isn't it?
it is. It's a lot of fun. We were there for the dirty linen party. I guess they have a white linen party, and the next night they have a dirty linen party. And so it's in the arts district, and you go through all the galleries and see all the wares. And the same weekend they had the red dress run. So everybody dresses up in red dresses and does this fundraiser run through the city. But mostly it's just people getting really drunk and raising money for different charities. And so it was a lot of fun. A lot of
That
fun.
sounds great. Boy, I cannot wait till we can get back to that.
Yes,
I'll put
yes.
on my red dress for that.
It was, yeah, it was lovely. So
And for when you were living here, you and Diane Wilson is your partner.
yes.
You had sort of a grassroots arts organization, didn't you? Will you tell
Oh,
us about
well, Diane works for Michigan State University Extension, and she started a program many years ago. Before she worked for Extension, she started an arts program called Michigan Art Share. We also developed a art gallery down in Rio Town, and that was called Art Alley, which we ran for a few years as a performance space and as an art gallery space. Later on, she put Michigan Art Share, incorporated it into the extension program, and now she works through Michigan State University Extension in Michigan Art Share. And that program brings new artists who have never shown before or who are local Michigan artists who have never had a solo show and helps them to develop that and does basically economic development for artists. Musicians who've never produced a CD or recording sessions and that sort of thing. So she kind of steers them in the right direction for grants and steers them in the right directions for things that they have to plan to get all these projects done. She was one of the, she basically, I guess the Arts Council now has something called Art Smarts. She basically started that program and handed it off. And then they developed it further into Art Smarts. So she's a good person to know.
Wow, what a power couple.
Yeah, well, we try.
Art Alley was beautiful, by the way. The space was gorgeous. The art was beautiful. It
Yeah.
was very performance aware.
Hmm.
You know, it was a beautiful performance space.
Well, the space is still being used by artists. I believe now there's a resale shop in there, but they were putting art in there and having performances in there for quite a while. So it's still going. It's just not called Art Alley anymore. But Art Alley, I believe, is going to be coming back digitally soon. So keep an
Really?
eye out for that.
All
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
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 And tell me about your podcast. I was going to say what are you doing during COVID, but I know. Tell
Well,
everybody about.
COVID was I mean it's horrible, but at the same time it was great for me in a lot of different ways because it allowed me to have space to do things. I was never in lockdown. I work for FedEx full time, so I was there every day. Nothing has changed for me in that sense. But everybody else was locked down, so there was space. People weren't calling and asking for things, or I couldn't go out to things, so I had time to sit down and figure out what I wanted to do. And um, we were in the process as a couple. Diane and I were in the process of trying to set up, um, I guess we salons where people would come over and just say, "Let's talk about what work are you doing and what do you want to do with it and how do you see the world and just share information and just do that every now and then." So COVID kind of nixed that whole thing. So I said, okay, well, what else can I do? And I said, well, I'm interested in the podcast thing. So I just did a lot of research and just started doing it at the end of August, beginning of September, because I was lucky enough. My aunt Naima Chambourget was asked to do the Detroit Jazz Festival, and she asked me to be part of that project. We did the Sister Strings for the Jazz Festival, and that was digital as well because everything was because of COVID. It was all digital, and so I said, well, let me get the podcast up so I can interview Naima and talk about that and then release the podcast at the same time as the jazz festival. So that's how that came about. Um, but yeah, so yeah, the it's Tia Time with Artist. And it's on Spotify, it is on iTunes, it is on my website, tiaviolin.com. It is everywhere and anywhere that you want to download a podcast. So we're up to about episode, I think, 8 or 9 right now. It's hard to remember because I'm still working on the different episodes and all the editing. But yeah, it's a lovely show, and you have been on the show. So
I
if you guys
have.
haven't tuned in yet, you should definitely hear the interview that we had. It was really fun.
So
So.
really, all you have to do is just Google Tia time, right? And it
Well, the thing
pops
that's
up for me.
interesting, since I'd started that show, there's a lot of tea times and Tia this and that. So you have to say Tia time with artists. Tia
Tia
time,
time with artists.
yes, because all of a sudden there's all these Tias out there. They weren't there when I started.
Yeah.
And so I started in, I think, February or March, and started, I got the name. I made sure that I could have that name and went on from there. And since that time, there's a lot of Tias popped up all over the place. So,
Interesting. There is another Sonny Wilkinson who has a YouTube channel too. Which,
wow,
I know.
it's crazy.
So of course we want to talk about your wonderful improvising on your violin and voice and the groups that you've done. But before we do that, let's go back to the idea of these salons. I love that. Okay, in my world, it can be so isolating to be an artist on your own,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it
And
can.
that beautiful energy that we can have can also turn inward and get dark if you're not careful.
Very easily.
Yeah, right? And so the thing that I love about the salon idea, and part of the reason I love doing this show is the sharing that goes on and the sharing of ideas and the sort of getting the energy unstuck and getting inspired again. And that's what I love about the idea of the salons is sharing that inspiration.
Well, it was something I've been craving for decades, because the one thing as a violin player, in especially in improvisation, and I say I'm a jazz violinist, but I'm really just an improvising violinist and vocalist. I love jazz. I tend to go more towards that because that's what my ear has heard. I started in classical and I moved into jazz, and those are the worlds that I feel the most comfortable in I like funk a lot, but those are just offshoots, a little blues, all of that. Um, but I will play anything, you know. If I'm with a group of people that only plays country, I'll figure it out. I might not sound like the best country fiddler in the world, but I can get the flavor, so that kind of thing. And I appreciate all those different styles. And I really like the world music sound. I really like all the different instruments that are played and the different scales that are used. And uh, I want to put pieces of that into the music because, the labeling of music is difficult for me, because it's like, yeah, that's jazz, that's not jazz. Well, according to who?
Yeah.
And some stuff, I remember doing improvisation with classical music way back when I would just be singing with some people, and they were like, okay, let's do an improv thing. I'm like, okay, great. And I'd sing something that I thought was like a madrigal kind of improvisation, and they were like, well, why are you getting it all jazzy? I said, I'm not. I'm singing like Bach. It's in the style of Bach.
Who
Because
knew?
Bach always improvised.
Yes.
Mozart always improvised. Those guys were cats. I studied with a vibraphone player in Detroit, Robert Pifo, who's a very wonderful pianist and vibraphonist. And one of the things he told me once, that he went to Germany and went to the Bach house, and there's a painting on the wall of Bach with a tankard of beer and a stogie in his mouth, and he's kind of like hanging out on the piano. And he said Bach was a cat. You know, and I just take that to heart. It's like, I haven't been to the Bach house, but somebody has, and saw this picture of Bach. It's painting of Bach hanging out at the pub, doing his thing. So, I could just see it. Bach was like, hey, I'm playing. There's my stogie.
And Bach had to make a living too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. As an aside, my husband fell and hurt his shoulder in March, right? His right shoulder.
Okay.
And it's healing, but it's taking some time. So he pulled out the baksha cones, which are all left-handed.
Mm,
He's 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 playing, tearing it up with the left hand. Isn't that cool?
that's amazing.
Yeah,
It's like, and probably just wouldn't have thought about doing that before. So
yeah.
you get into these
Not a whiner,
situations.
my husband. He's a when life gives you lemons, make lemonade
Hmm.
kind of guy.
That's right. Got to have that attitude.
Well, I think that we should play one of your pieces, and if you don't mind, I want to start with. I love your titles, man. I love your titles. What? No Sipsy?
Oh, yeah. What? No, Sipsy.
So let me play this for
Okay.
everybody. Here
Sure.
we go.
Yeah.
That is so hip.
That was, Carolyn Keeble on percussion and Eldon Kelly on guitars. And we went into the studio for that album is called The Spaces Between Us. We went into the studio and we just started playing. So I think on that tune we just said, Carolyn, give us something, and she started, and then we just jumped on and rode that where it took us. So yeah, that there's it later on it gets a little bit more even more Arabic in the middle of it, and that's where the Sipsi would have been if we had one. And Carolyn didn't bring the Sipsi that day. So
Tell us, tell us what a Sipsy is.
Sipsi is one of those long reed instruments, and it just has a really high pitched kind of sound to it. And she didn't bring it, so I was like, "Oh, you didn't bring this? So what? No Sipsi?" So
What? No
that's what we call
Sipsy?
it. Because up to that, the couple of days we were recording it, she had brought it, and we were like, "Oh, we'll save it for something." And then one day we think, "Oh, we could put Sipsi on there." No
No
Sipsi.
Sipsy. So did you tell us what your recording process was with pieces like this that just emerge?
uh It really is just being open to the other musicians in the room, and just open to what's coming out of you at the time, or what's in the, I don't know, in the ethers. Just being open to that all the time. I studied with Rhiannon, who also plays with Bobby McFerrin. And of course, I got a chance to actually play with Bobby McFerrin one time at the Wharton Center in Lansing a couple of years back, and I got to do the same thing with him. So Carolyn was on that stage too, and Igor Huwat, he's a oud player in Lansing also, and we got to play. And Marion Hayden was in that band, and Mike Jellick was in that band. It was a really wonderful night.
I
And
was in the audience
that's
for that.
right. That's right.
It was a wonderful night.
Yeah.
You all made us proud. You
Oh,
rocked it. It was fantastic.
fantastic. So I was just honored because he, at times, Bobby just handed me his stage. And I was like, oh, okay. And so, but I'm just used to doing that, so it was fine. But it was surprising. I was like so excited to work with him, and he would just hand stuff over, and I was like, okay, let's go. So it was a wonderful gesture on his part that he was willing to do that. So
Well,
really
what I
enjoyed that.
noticed about that night too, and about this kind of music in general, is you have to be willing to jump in,
Hmm.
but you also have to be listening and spare enough so that there's room for everybody else,
Right,
right?
right.
And it seemed like you all had done that enough that it just gelled beautifully.
Well, it's definitely a no ego thing, because you're working in service to the music, and you're always trying to figure out, at least in my mind, I'm always trying to figure out, how do I support what's happening, how do I support what's happening. And sometimes supporting what's happening means not doing anything, just being there and being silent,
Yeah.
and then waiting for that opportunity where, or they're inviting me in, or you really hear something very clearly that would fit beautifully, that would also support this other line that's happening, or it will, and sometimes you have those beautiful moments in your mind, and then somebody else puts something else in, and you just immediately squash it, like, oh no, this is, it's going this way now, so let
Yeah.
me not put that in. So it's having the ability to pick and choose, and to just support the music, you know. The hard part is when you're a leader, you have to pick and choose, and then you have to lead everybody else at the same time, so you're conducting and creating.
Yes. Do you find with, I know you work with a lot of beginners and you also work with people like Carolyn and Eldon who are
Mhm.
masters. Um, what's my question here? Do you find that it takes a while for people to learn how to develop an idea? In other words, a lot of times I'll hear, here's an idea, whoop, okay, now here's an idea, whoop, now here's an idea, whoop, and jumping around. But the more you
there
get into the music, you develop your ideas more fully.
it it takes practice of playing together, I believe, and sometimes there are just moments like that. But
Yeah.
what I have found is, if there's moments where there's ideas just being flung about like that, and I don't do anything and let those ideas develop, they do tend to merge faster. So when I put something in, it's something to solidify the ideas that I hear. Like, there might be one idea on one side and one idea on another side, and they don't hear how they connect, and I do. So I will throw in a piece
Oh,
that connects them. So as a leader, that's my thing, is to say, okay, I hear this and I hear this other thing. Sometimes I'll throw out something all by myself, and they're, and like Eldon and Carolyn would be like, I don't know where she's going. And they would just let me go, and then they'd find something, or I'd give them something. So I would just say, fine, let me just go. And sometimes I am developing something, and then I get to a point, and then I repeat it. And then they know, oh, there it is. So then they can jump on that. And then from there, I might lead it someplace else, but I let that thing build for a minute. Then I try to switch it to something else, so that there's like a bridge. So it's basically, I'm using an ABA kind of formula. So I have an A section, then we do a little transition in the middle, then we go to another A section, and then there might be a C section, depending on if one of us gets inspired. But then I try to always bring it back to the A. So once the A is pretty solid, I have to remember it while I'm creating a new part. So
yeah. You're keeping a lot of balls in the air at one time.
yeah, it's a composition thing. It's a composition exercise. And I remember hearing an interview many years ago with Bobby McFerrin. The reason he developed his voicestra was to compose, and because that was before the time when you could do the tracks. You couldn't do all that home studio stuff. You had to have millions of dollars to build a studio at home, and the track players came later, and the looping pedals came later. But a lot of the stuff he was doing then, you can do with a loop pedal by yourself now.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So he was doing a lot of this for composition.
Necessity's the mother of invention kind
It
of thing,
is.
right?
Yeah.
He heard, I taught with his mom, at
Okay.
Fullerton College. She's a lovely, wonderful woman and beautiful musician.
Hmm.
And his daddy was also an
Opera
opera
singer.
singer. They
Right.
both were. And she said that he came out of the womb like that, hearing all of this and hearing this universe of sound.
Hmm.
And no wonder he developed that so that he could get it all out.
To get it, yeah, you had to do something. Um, it's the cool thing now is because of loop pedals. Like I finally got into the loop era, um, because a lot of the things when loop first came out, it was I wanted to be able to, or I should go into this before the loop pedals came out, before the electric violin equipment was as good as it is, before the pedals were as good as they are. Um, a lot of the songs or violin players who were playing with pedals and stuff would just use them for effects. And I said, I can make those effects on an acoustic instrument. I don't need the pedals to make effects. And I just figured out how to make a lot of those sounds because I couldn't do it because I didn't have a pedal. So I said, I can make it without having a pedal and get the same effects as a pedal without having a pedal. So now I'm like, okay, I
That is
can't.
so cool, by the way. That is fantastic.
Well, the thing about it is it's so funny too because it's like when you are a poor musician and you're especially when you're a student and you're trying to learn these things, you can't afford to pay for things. You can't go out and get these things, or you can't necessarily find a teacher to teach you these things. And this is before YouTube, and this is before the podcast existed. So all of this stuff you had to figure out on your own. And so I said, I got that part. Now we're in the place where, okay, looping pedals, I can do a lot of things which I couldn't do before. So it helps me to just solidify some ideas. And the thing is with loop pedal, you have to do it quickly. So a lot of the stuff I was learning to do with other musicians, I am now learning to do by myself because
Oh,
you have to, is a different world because there is nobody else to bounce off of. It's just you, but you have to get the timing right and you have to keep the idea. So you're still composing at the same time as you're directing yourself, which is harder than directing other people because they have their own ideas. And so there's stuff that comes out that you wouldn't expect. And you're like, oh, that's great. I can use that. For me, it's like, oh, I know what I'm doing here, but I'm not sure how to get over there. I have this other idea, but I'm not sure, and I don't know where it fits, you know. But it's so I'm spending some time trying to learn that because I would like to do a solo CD someday, um, just because I think it's something would help me grow. Um,
I can really picture you doing that. I mean, there's a tune that I almost wanted to play, "Walking with My Soul,"
oh,
that you
sure,
do by yourself.
yeah,
That's on your first record,
it's on
right?
my first record. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you, thank
So
you.
I sort of felt like it was not going in that direction, but almost. I can see
Almost.
you
Well,
doing that.
that was a collaboration with choreographer Andrea E. Woods Valdez, who teaches dance at Duke University. At the time, we were living in New York, and I met her through some friends, and she was doing choreography, and she needed somebody to do music, and we just got together and started working on this project. So it worked out really well. So that is part of a three-part piece um, entitled Inside that she did a video for, and she did a choreography for with another dancer. Um, and that was, so it was, the first part was walking, the second part I believe was dancing, and the third part uh was waltz, I think, or something like that. I can't exactly remember it anymore, exactly the order of it, but those pieces came out of that. It was Walking with His Soul was the first piece. So it just
And
developed out of me watching
can
her
people
dance.
find the video? Is the video up
The
on?
video is not available at
Okay.
this time. The only place it is, I believe it's in the Jerome Robbins library in New York. Is
Right,
the
I
only
read
place it is
that.
right that.
So
But
it's archived there.
it is archived there, but it's not available. I'm not sure. There were some reasons that we couldn't put it out, but but the music is still there. And that's and on my website you can go to tiaviolin.com and find the original there. It's also available on Spotify. So yeah, and that one's called The Book of Tia.
The book
So
Tia.
that was my first foray into recording. I had waited a long time to try to record, and I just couldn't afford it because things now are so much cheaper than they were then. Uh, so I just racked up the credit card and got some friends to play on it, and
Who played on that record? Tell us.
that was uh, Mimi Mimi Jones, bass player. She's at the time she was called Miriam Sullivan, but it says Miriam Sullivan, but she goes by Mimi Jones now. And David Pleasant on percussion, Alistair McCrae Birch on guitars. I think who else was on that? Yeah, I think that's it. Um, that's it in me.
Where
So
did you record it?
sorry.
Where did you record it?
Um, there it was a student run organization, and I don't actually remember the name of the place. That somebody told me about, and we got in there, and we got there, we were all set to go. I was so excited because I had planned this whole thing out, and I produced the whole thing by myself, and I was making it happen. I got everybody there, and then the um sound engineer didn't show up. And
Due to
I'm
a
thinking,
student-run organization.
yeah.
Wow.
And we're sitting there, and it took us a minute to get set up. So I didn't notice that he wasn't there. I thought, because there was somebody there, but I thought that was who it was, right? I didn't know. And they said, well, your sound engineer's not here. I said, what do you mean? I thought you were the sound engineer. Oh, no, I'm like, really? Oh, okay. So they were able to call somebody who rushed over, and luckily we were able to do it. But it was tight.
Talk about a steep learning curve,
It
right?
was. And we had a very short amount of time because all the other musicians had gigs to go to. So, we had to get in and get out and done. So that's partly why it's only I think there's only 6 tunes on that CD. 3 of them were from the video that I shot, and then the rest of them were in the studio because we just didn't have enough time to go any longer.
So did you re-record those three pieces, or did you
I
were you
took
able
the
to transfer them?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just transferred them. So it was like I said it's time to get something out because it's not going to
absolutely.
be perfect, but it's going to be something because it's the kind of thing when you write and you don't produce it, it just sits there and it molders and it drives you insane, like I'm just not finished yet, and you can't move on to the new thing because you still have this whole cachet of old stuff that's just not done.
Yeah.
So that was one of those things, like, let me clear out my storehouse here, and so I can start working on the other ones. And I'm in that place again because the second CD was great, but there was other stuff that's older than that was composed, that needs to be done. So I'm trying to get back to those things because I have like a 2 hour show that I did in 2005 at the Brooklyn Conservatory of Music called Everything I Hear, and it's 2 hours of music that I wrote. So I would like to actually record that. So
Yeah, we want you to record it. That's fantastic.
yeah, so it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen piece by piece, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And and I've got to recently record it. I'm going to be releasing a new single. It's called "Winter Melts into Spring," and I wrote that not too long ago, and I had a chance to record it last summer. So I just released that. It will be up on Bandcamp very soon, and
On what?
then
It will
on
be
Bandcamp.
on
On
Bandcamp.
Bandcamp,
Okay.
yeah,
Oh,
which
yeah.
you can get to through mytiaviolin.com site. And we're My graphic designer Brittany Wilson is working on a music video for that right now. So there's just stuff I'm working on. um,
Isn't
it's
it
gonna happen.
interesting how COVID it's pulled so many things apart, but it's also given us a little time to be introspective and plan and make some things happen that wouldn't happen normally.
Yes, 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 yes. just thinking about trying to stay in a positive vein during this time, because there's a lot of stress just around not wanting to get sick, um, staying employed, making sure everybody else in the family is safe, and um, helping people out, and then there's folks that are suffering because they don't have a job anymore and things like that. So there's just a lot. Plus the Black Lives Matter movement and the election going on and all craziness around that. So it's just trying to stay in that positive place as a musician, and keep remembering that the purpose that I'm here for is to create beauty and culture in the world, and do that all the time. So
Oh, my friend, I hear you. Do you feel like there's more stress on you with regard to the Black Lives Matter and
I don't
that
know
it's
if there's more stress. It's just that I think a lot of things that were semi hidden from folks, um, is coming out.
yeah,
That is more clear that, oh yeah, that does exist. Oh yeah, that is here. And A lot of us have, we live through it every day. So it's not new to us, but to other folks, it seems to be oh, I didn't know that was there. I didn't know that was happening because it was semi hidden. There's certain things that are not were never good to say or express. And I think that the president we have now has made it okay for people to just say whatever they think whenever they think it, and not caring about anybody else. The empathy is lost.
yeah,
And I think that that has been maximized in the country and in the media. And so, in that sense, there's more stress on everybody. And therefore, if you already have stress on you, there's going to be more stress.
yeah.
Um,
Could I ask you another question about that?
sure.
I mean, with everything being so overt, right? Before it was there, but as you say, it was hidden. I used to say, well, then you know. When it's overt, you can deal with it more readily,
Hmm.
right? I'm not so sure I believe that anymore. I would really like people to go back to being kind and
Well,
empathic.
I like people to be kind and empathic, and I think that when people are, they are
Yeah,
just across the board, regardless of race. And I think that hasn't changed. I think that now it's that people are they're giving themselves excuses to not be that way. Well, the leader of our country doesn't have to do it, so why should I?
yeah,
It's like that. Uh, this is the only place where trickle down economics works. So if you have a bad example at the top, it's going to trickle down to everybody else. That's the only time I've seen that idea of trickle down work. With
I
economics, it
believe
doesn't
that.
work.
But I believe that no matter what organization you're in,
Hmm.
the tone of your organization will come from the leader,
Right.
right? Whether you're
Correct.
a corporation or a band
That's
or a
right.
country.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think in that sense we're experiencing a lot of stress.
yeah.
A lot of stress. I also feel like there's a lot of stress around politics between women and men for some reason is a lot worse than it's been in a really long time. Um, a lot of men are feeling really threatened by the empowerment of women, and I don't understand that exactly, but there it is. It is happening. And I think we saw that a lot when Hillary was running, because I would talk to people and they'd say, well, they'd say I'm not voting for her because I don't like her. I hate her. And I would say, well, what do you hate about her? And they couldn't give me a reason. And to me, that just meant, oh, you don't want a woman telling you something. That's what that is. Because if you can't actually give me a reason why you hate somebody, you don't hate them. You hate the idea of them,
Yeah.
which is a different thing.
It is a different thing. My husband and I were talking about this, and I think all of us, we're in a pretty wonderful stage of our life because we're essentially retired. We have
Hmm.
each other. We have a beautiful home. We have an amount of safety, right? And quietude. But even with that, there's ups and downs with all of this.
Sure.
With COVID and with Black Lives Matter and with well, the almost the abduction of our governor.
Right.
And we were talking about the idea that this really is right now a paradigm shift.
It is. It is.
And I think some things are going to shift for the better, but this turmoil is a little terrifying. And what's going on in our country, it breaks my heart.
Well, it breaks my heart, but at the same time, I'm glad it's out in the open. I am glad it's out in the open because you can't confront it directly if it's not there directly. Um, and and as I believe as artists, our confronting it directly is just make more art because we create the culture and we set the tone and we vibrate everything that we come into contact with. We vibrate it with color, with sound, with the sound of someone reading our literature, the sound of somebody playing our music, the sound of someone reading the poetry or writing the poetry. All of that creates vibration in the world. And if our vibration as artists is going to be higher, and it's going to bring everything up around it up higher. So our job is make as much art as possible. So I recently, in the last couple of years, have really been into uh, get it done. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it out there. Create more, create more, create more, create more. And that again was part of why the podcast came to be, because it's like we need to talk to each other. We need to share our ideas. We need to share our philosophies. We need to incite other artists to do more. I've talked to several artists that my friend Deborah Klesmer, she's a has Deborah Klesmer Designs. She's doing fundraising for COVID victims for the Native Americans from selling of her jewelry as part of her work in the world. She's doing fundraisers for legal defense funds. She's doing things like that. We've got, uh, it's just make whatever you can do, just do that thing.
Yes.
Do that thing. You're going to be happier. Everybody around you is going to be happier. And the world's going to be better. So you can't really focus on the super bad. You have to be aware of it, but you don't have to focus on it. And stop watching the news, because the news is not really the news. The news is the bad. They should call it the bad instead of the news. News used to be, this happened today. This is what happened. This is what these people saw. Look here, this is what's going. Now it's like, now this is what happened and this is how you should think about it. That's not the news.
No.
And this is the only side of the story you're going to hear over and over and over and over and over again. That's not the news. So, stop watching the news. I haven't watched the news in 30 years, and it keeps me a little bit calmer
Yeah,
because
I
you can see
understand.
things. You can
Yeah.
see things when you do see things. If you do pick up the news, you can say, you look at it and you go, well, wait a minute. What happened over? I just saw this happen in the corner in the shot. Why didn't you show that? What's going on? But you never see that. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, um, yeah.
I want to go back to a quote that you said because I really do believe what you said about essentially our culture is built on dreams and its dreams are dreamt by artists and the operating at a higher vibration and that's our job is to bring people up and along and share whatever your purpose is, whether it's beauty or to funkify them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a quote from you that is on your website that I just love. It says, Miss Hanna says her mission is to create music that makes the listener remember that they are spiritual beings, that spirit moves within us through sound, through vision, through dance, with joy and love.
Hmm. I forget I say these things.
That's pretty profoundly beautiful, my love. that, that speaks right down to the core and the essence. So that I so that I don't cry here on camera, may we play another piece of your music?
Oh, sure. That would be
Let's
fine.
let's do. I've got to get it up here. I'm going to Zale.
Oh, going back to Zale.
Going back to Zale. Okay, now I have to cue up the right thing here. Hold on one second.
Sure.
Talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, baby.
Bop, 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 dee 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 da boo dee da 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 boo da da doo doo da da doo doo boo bee boo bee boo bee boo bee sadness you don't own.
And I'm going to re-cue this up so that we can hear you sing a little bit.
Okay.
I miscued. Let's see, 2:30. Here we go. Okay.
Yeah, my movie soundtrack.
That's going through the streets of Zod.
Yeah, that one. I always think of that as walking through the deserts in Africa. Zale is a city. I was looking for a name. I didn't know where. I've never been to Zale. I've never been to South Africa, but it's someplace in the southern part of Africa. And it was a city, and I said, oh, so we're gonna travel down this deserty road back to Zale, which would be home. So
I
we're
looked it
just.
up. It's in Lebanon.
Oh, it's in Lebanon. Oh, I thought it was in Africa. Never mind. All right, but yeah. And because I was just I went through the when we were trying to name these tracks, I just went through and found a name that I just thought, well, that's a city. I'll call it that, And we're just going through this circuitous route, walking. It's dry. It's sunny. It's a little bit hot. It's dusty, and and it's kind of a nod to Ennio Morricone, who did this
Oh,
the soundtracks for like the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and all those kind of things. It's
Once
that
Upon
kind
a
of
Time in the West.
yes, that kind of stuff. And in my mind, it's that kind of look, like it's deserty and it's western looking, but it could be anywhere there's a desert. It could look like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
So
fantastic.
yeah.
And again, folks, I just want to stress that a lot of these pieces are spontaneous improvisations. They come up with a thread and then they go with it, which I just think is, it's such an interesting, exciting way to make music, right?
It makes you be in the moment. That is for sure.
So I want to talk a little bit about the fact that when I was teaching at Michigan State, I had you come in and work with my students,
Yes. Yes, yes.
and you had done the Bobby McFerrin, Rhiannon improvisation experience of the circle songs, and you
Right.
worked with my students and exposed them to a whole new way of thinking about the music. And I was wondering if you could take the people listening through that experience a little bit and share how you built those layers and
It is, it's really difficult without actual people in front of you because everybody's coming from it from a different spot. And I try really hard to listen to who's in the room and see where they are because everybody is coming at it from a different place. And uh, we usually have, I set everybody up in a circle and we do versions of circle singing. We don't actually get to circle singing until probably the end of our workshop because folks haven't done it before. So there's a little bit of shyness.
would you explain what circle singing is?
Circle singing is literally you stand in a circle and there's different ways of doing it. I know one of the ways that Bobby does it is he will give you a part to sing, or he'll just sing and then he'll point to you and say, "You sing this." And then he'll walk around and give different parts. And as that goes on and those parts continue, he'll stop one group from singing something and he'll give them another part. So he's doing that composition direction at the same time. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it that Rhiannon has done many times is that she um, gives everybody a general direction in the very beginning and says, like something I've borrowed this from her is everybody starts on a note and I'll pick the note and we sing it. You can do it in octaves. If it's too high, you can sing it lower. Uh, and we start on that same note for a little while and just let it really ring and resonate. And then from there, you just start adding things. You can add harmonies, you can add rhythms, you can add sound effects, you can add words, you can add whatever else it is. And it's you being you at that time, but you're also thinking cohesion with the group. How am I going to support what's happening already? And if you hear somebody else doing something that you like, you can jump over and sing it with them. You can walk across the circle and sing that with them because, oh, yeah, I like that. I'm going to harmonize with that. Or, so there's room for play, room for movement. You're not stuck in the same place that you were in. You don't have to keep the same part all the time. And Rhiannon tends to call that shape shifting. So you'll get this huge mass of people building this church of sound, and then it'll shift and all sway together to something else. And then the other direction is when you feel that you are done, sing a solo note. And then when everybody hits that note, and we all and there's I don't even know how it happens, but we all end on the same note and we all end together. It goes as long as it goes, and you just have to really be open and aware and listen to the muse and see how it develops. um it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I saw that happen many times because as soon as you taught us how to do it, I would use that for my choir warm-ups,
Mm.
right? And didn't you show us how to do the machine too, where you
Oh, yeah, there was one of the game again that Rhiannon taught. Uh it's called different things. There's either band, mystery band, or orchestra, and everybody has a different job, and you can have groups that have the same job. Depends on how many people you have. If it's a small group, then one person will have that job, and you have the motor, um, and that person is the driving force that keeps everything synchronized. That might be, it could be a timekeeper, it could be somebody who is doing mouth percussion of some kind, or it could be somebody singing some kind of a determined bass line, or some kind of repeating figure,
yeah.
just something that kind of sets a tempo, something that it's easy to build other parts around. Then the person next to them will sing a contrapuntal rhythm or something that accents or accentuates what the motor is doing. And then the person next to that person will do a harmony to that part. And then the next person will do another different part that works with those other three parts. And then eventually you get to a soloist who will sing over what's happening. Um, so that's really fun to do. It's just a game
A
you get
game.
to play, you know.
Yeah. And it gets the kids, well, everybody, it gets all of us loosened up and
Hmm.
freer to create and listen and sing together and
Exactly.
balance. It's such a beautiful thing. You know,
It's really energetically in the room. You feel other people's energies. You kind of intuitively sometimes know where they're going to go, and you go, oh yeah, and then you sing as a unit. Your ears open up really very widely, so you can hear each other and really experience each other's energy. um and it sounds woo woo, but it's not. It's just that the you're just all on the same page, but at the
the
same
kids,
time
when
you're.
you think about it, is we are energetic beings.
Yes.
And when our energy's all going in the same way, whether you're grooving in a band,
Hmm.
you're having an intimate conversation, or you're creating circle songs and these exercises, we respond to that really beautifully.
We do. We do. It's really fulfilling because you feel like you have a real communication with people you may not have even met before.
Yeah.
You may not even have had a conversation with them at all other than this musical conversation, because you're in a workshop and you may not get a chance to talk to them ever again. This is the only chance, but in that moment you really connected with them,
Yeah.
and we're on the same page, which is something that just doesn't happen in the real world that much, and it should. So and I think once you have that feeling, then you can kind of take that feeling with you, like, oh, maybe this should happen more often. Maybe I can listen more, and it will happen more. So.
Yeah. Well, I, I think it does. I'm a preacher's kid, man. Music and the arts are my way of getting out the message, right?
Hmm.
That message of joy and love and beauty.
Right.
We're
Right.
all about something different, maybe, but I realize for me, my aesthetic is beauty.
Hmm.
Whatever kind of music or art that is, it doesn't have to be beautiful to you, but it has to be beautiful to me. And if I can give a little bit of that back, that
Oh
hopefully
yeah.
contributes to that, right?
I did a workshop with the a women's choir in Lansing. It was the gosh, I can't think of the name of the choir. I know exactly, how it's on the tip of my tongue, but a large women's choir in Lansing. There's only one. Um, and we did the workshop for the day, and folks were really shy about singing solos because it's a choir. They sing their parts, and it wasn't a professional choir. It was a amateur choir. So they were still shy even after about 2 hours of working on these different things, but they were having fun. And I had someone bold enough to do the solo part of that um, mystery band, and she literally screamed through the entire solo. It was hilarious.
Did she really?
She did. She just went, ah, what did because we had
Good
this
for
whole
her.
we had all this music going underneath it, and it worked. It was fabulous. It
I
was
just
fabulous.
love that.
So I'll never forget that. So it was musical and very strange in that it worked, but it did, because we
Yeah.
had a rhythm going, we had some harmonies going, we had these contrapuntal melodies going, and then this screaming solo, just screaming,
And she felt free enough to do that, which I,
because she was scared. She said she was scared, but she volunteered to do it, and so that was it. That's what came out, and it was perfect.
oh
It
my
was perfect.
goodness. That's
So.
great. That's just great. Well, you have to tell us a little bit about your astounding family. Yeah.
Well, uh, my mother, Camille Hanna, she sings with every choir in the world. She was part of, we had on my mother's side, the Davis Family Choir, which was a family choir in Detroit, in the late 50s, early 60s. into the 70s, I think. I was a little kid, so I think I was there for parts of it, but I don't remember. So she sings with Brazil Denard Choir now in Detroit. And then my dad had an amazing baritone voice, and he sang with churches all over. In in his youth mostly, because by the time I came along, he hadn't really been singing out publicly, but I heard him sing every day, sing and whistle. He was an amazing whistler.
Wow.
And I got the whistling from him because on the Spaces Between Us album, I whistle on one of the tracks. Um, and again, a nod to Ennio Morricone with the, so
Yeah.
a nod to him. And then my dad's brother was a famous jazz pianist, Sir Roland Hanna. And I actually didn't get to meet him and know him till I was in my 30s, because I had moved to New York at that point, because he was always in New York and we were in Detroit. So I just didn't really know him until then. And then my aunt Naima Chambourget, who's a jazz singer in Detroit, phenomenal,
Love
and
her.
learned a lot from her.
What a
Uh,
light.
yeah, and then my younger sister, Penny Wells, is a R&B vocalist. She has an amazing voice.
Fabulous
Um,
singer.
so you know, and then I have great aunts. My great aunt Georgia May Davis was an opera singer, a contralto, that did concert tours all throughout the world in the 50s and 60s.
I'd
Uh,
forgotten that. I'd forgotten that
yeah,
you were related to her.
yeah, and
Wow.
then my aunt um, Gloria was a teacher, and used to sing with the Detroit Metropolitan Opera chorus. She was a soprano. She taught here in Highland Park and in the city, and then in Bermuda and different places through her lifetime. My aunt, my great aunt Evelyn Scales Davis, she was a pianist and a organist, and Gloria and Evelyn both went to Juilliard. And Evelyn was in Brooklyn, so I got to know her really well when I was living in Brooklyn, before she passed. And she was a phenomenal piano player. She was scary how good she was. So it's there. It's just there in the family. Grew up singing and hearing music and playing piano and playing violin, and I played guitar for a quick minute. I only gave it up because it was leaving calluses on my fingers and I couldn't feel my violin strings, so I gave up the guitar, even though I really loved it. Uh, it's always been there. The family has always been doing something. I remember Naima just starting to do jazz publicly in Detroit area when the Detroit Banjo Jazz Festival was the Detroit Banjo Jazz Festival, and then she started to work on that every year, and we'd always go down and see her at Hart Plaza perform. And I was just doing classical music on the violin because there really wasn't any options for violin players to really do jazz as far as I knew at that time. So I learned as much technique as I could, and then later, probably not till I was 25, 26, did I start trying to learn how to improvise. So, so I'm a little late on that one,
Oh, I
but
don't think so.
it's coming. It's coming. It's getting better. It's getting better. And now I'm expanding out a little bit into some other instruments. I'm playing a little bit of mandolin, and trying to get my piano chops back up a little bit because it's been a long time. I used to play piano first. I played better on piano than I did on violin.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was doing concertos and stuff in high school. But I got to chance with when I went to Cass Tech, and I got a chance to perform the Beethoven's First Piano Concerto with orchestra in high school. And then I came back out and I did the Vivaldi double violin concerto right after that. So it was kind of like, okay, I'm fighting with my instruments here. But uh, I ran into a lot of people telling me that I played one better and I should just give one up. A lot of people said that you don't sing that well. You should probably not sing. You should play your violin, or you should not play your violin. You should not sing. You should just play the piano. I got told that a lot. And so I finally kind of came to the conclusion that, well, you guys are wrong. And so then I started to sing and play at the same time. I said, now top that. So
That is so interesting because that stuff, when, especially when you're told young, sticks. You
it
know,
does.
you should
It
do that.
does.
You shouldn't, you don't sing that well. You shouldn't sing.
Hmm.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is
It's,
the polar opposite of what you should tell a young person.
well, it's one of those that, and I've been guilty of telling people to concentrate on one for a while. I
Well,
said, don't give it up, but concentrate on one for a while so that you feel really secure in one of them. So at least one of them, like you feel like you have this, because then you can build from that.
right.
But I do
You
tell
don't want
people
to
that.
be, you don't want to be, you don't want to grow dilettantes, right?
Hmm.
You want to be highly skilled, but that doesn't mean you can't be highly skilled in several things.
No, no.
And that's one thing that I did want to talk to you about before we say adieu is your improvising vocally and on the violin on several of your videos on your website. You do that, and it's
Hmm.
so effective and so cool.
it it came out of, um, I studied with so many different teachers. Um, and I studied with Julie Lyon Lieberman in New York, finally on violin. But prior to that, I only had classical violin teachers, and really good teachers,
Yeah.
but just classical teachers. And they just didn't, they gave me technique and things, but it was because I wasn't playing classical music, it was hard to really connect those things together because the sound in classical is just different. The attacks are harder, and it just, and when I tried to play stuff on jazz, it just sounded wrong. It just sounded really wrong. Um, Way too loud, way too strident, way too it just didn't work. Uh so I studied with saxophone players, I studied piano players, I studied um with a vibraphone player, I studied with a trumpeter, just lessons here and there with different people, some singers. And then I was really, really, really still am really into Tanya Maria, Brazilian singer and pianist, just phenomenal.
She's one of my favorites.
Yeah, mine too.
I've seen
Yeah,
her at least 3 or 4 times live when I was in LA. She's a phenom.
yeah,
Tanya
yeah.
Maria. Oh my God.
She's so great.
I've got to get her music out. Thank
Yeah,
you.
she's so amazing. I just love her. And I saw her now. She was on a special on PBS, and I just happened to be turning channels. And I said, "Who's that?" And she was going and she was playing it on the piano. I was like, "Whoa, what is that?" I said, "I can do that." I loved that. That was so like, that's me, you know. I said, so I just started to do that. And prior to that, I heard of Slam Stewart was a bassist who used to sing an octave higher than he'd play on the bass, and he would do the same thing. And of course, George Benson did it
Yeah.
on the guitar. But those were the influences. It was like, oh, so you can do that. You can do that. And then said, okay. And then um at one point, I got an audition for Straight Ahead. Marion Hayden called me and she said, "Oh, you know, I saw you play at this thing. Come and audition for our band." And I was like, at that point, I was literally just memorizing other people's lines, like, and trying to get, you know, I was playing stuff out, but it was other people's solos. And I told her, I said, I don't know how to improvise. I can play, but I don't know how to improvise. And she told me, she said, keep it up. Cause you know, the audition was fine up to the part where I actually had to improvise. Um, and she said, keep it up. And she said, you know, some people are singing and playing at the same time. And I was like, oh, that's a thing. And I had never heard that before as far as violin. Now, other instruments like a bass, you have the bass here and you can sing because your mouth and your throat's straight and everything's, you know, you can sing. If you're playing a cello, you can sing. You're playing piano, you can sing. But a violin is like your throat's kind of cut off. And so I had to like, I have really rotten violin position now so that I can sing, you know. But you have to do it, you know,
Yeah.
it's just what it is. And then I over time there's more and more because of YouTube and things like that, you can see more and more violin players who are improvising. And so a lot of them have crappy positioning because they're playing like fiddle players, you know, so it's like down here but they're playing great, you know, they're not up here like the
Yeah.
classical
Right. I've
players.
seen that.
And it's because you don't have to do as much high work that's so high that you have to hold that in position in order to get those high pitches. And because in jazz, you're not going to play way up the stratosphere. You're just not going. It's not going to sound right.
Yeah.
So that means you can drop this and go, yeah, I can do this now. So it was a trial and error kind of a thing. And it also taught me how to hear my own voice. So what Julie Line Lieberman taught me was to play a line and then sing a line, play a line, sing a line. So you were playing trading force with yourself. Um, and so you're creating two different lines, but you're doing it. And then at one point I said, well, I can do it together. That's easier than trying to like play it here and play something different over here. So I just started doing it together and say, oh, wait, okay. So now I can do both things. And it took a while, but it was just play with it. And it was just fun. I remember being at the International Association of Jazz Educators, and I think it was in Chicago one year, and one of a trumpet player, I can't think of his name right now, but he saw me with my fiddle and he says, oh, can you play? And I said, I opened the case and I dropped it right there and I just started playing and singing. Because I was like, hey, that's my chance. Let me go, you know. And he said, well, I really like that. Let's keep that up, because nobody was doing that, you know. So it was like, okay. So yeah, it's just a way to develop your own voice. You hear something in your head, you try to figure out how to play it. And then you try to, or you know, sometimes you hear it in your head and you can sing it easily, but you can't play it. So you sing it and then you play it. So it works both ways. Now it's stuff when I'm playing, I actually have fights with myself sometimes in concert, going, all right, which voice am I listening to? Because I'm like, I don't want to
schizophrenic. Musically schizophrenic.
Because I'm like, I don't want to sound like I'm singing this. I want to sound like, because I play different things with my fingers, because you don't have to breathe the same.
Right.
So I'm like, wait, I'm limiting myself because I can go further with this. So listen to the violin voice now, you know. And then other times I'm like, I'm really stuck. I can't figure out what to play. Sing now.
Well, you could just keep that up 24 hours a day. And
So,
annoy all your neighbors.
Exactly.
Will she ever shut up?
And then, you know, and that's I think the fear of playing the solo album is that fear. It's like, oh my gosh, me, 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 me. I don't want to hear me anymore. Nobody else will either. Me, me, me.
I know you will figure it out, my dear. I can't wait. I feel like there's so much like gestating and popping around in there. It's gonna be wonderful.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. I just have to settle down long enough to do it.
And you and I have to make some music together again sometime.
Yes.
It's
For
been
sure.
too long.
We're gonna do it. It's gonna happen. I have also on my list of music that I'm going to do a duo or two, maybe it might be a series of duo CDs. So we will do something.
Wouldn't that be fun? Do you remember when we were working together and we did Autumn Leaves a cappella?
Oh, yeah. I
And
remember that.
improvised and played, and it was so much fun.
It was fun. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do that again. Definitely.
Well, my dear Tia, I think we're nearing the end of a marvelous hour together. And then the stuff that we started off with and never got onto Facebook Live. Is there anything before we close off that you'd like to share or say to our audience and the folks out there?
Well, you know, thanks so much for listening to me go on and on. And thank you for having me, Sunny. But please come to tiaviolin.com. The new podcast is there. The YouTube stuff is there. All my Bandcamp downloadable material is there. We are doing a free single. What No Sipsy is if one of our free tracks that you can download for free and you can hear the whole thing. So yeah, come to tiaviolin.com.
So great to have you with me, Tia. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Sunny. I really appreciate it.
So, folks, before we sign off, I just always have to thank my beautiful muses, Jamie Sue Seal and Susan O'Rourke at Smokin' Sled Dog Records. Isn't that just fun to say? Smokin'
Love it.
Sled Dog Records. There's some joy in that. Thank you for your support and all of your help. You're amazing women. And I want to let you know that our next show, November 9th, is going to feature Cindy Taggart, Professor Cindy Taggart, who developed the early childhood music program at Michigan State University.
Oh,
And it is fascinating. I hope she's going to take us through some of the ideas of that. My child, who is kind of a music prodigy these days, he's getting his PhD in music composition at the University of Utah, started off when he was 3 months old in Cindy Taggart's early childhood music program.
mm.
So you never know what's going to happen. So I hope you can tune in. Thank you so much for being with us. Lots of love to you all. Thank you so much, Tia. Mwah!